Michelina Lewandowska and Marcin Kasperzak met in 2005 in their native Poland. Marcin proposed a year later, and the couple relocated to England. When Michelina became pregnant in 2008, the relationship began to deteriorate. They called off their engagement, but they remained together, and Michelina wore her ring in the hopes that things would work out. That was not the case, unfortunately. By 2011, things had only gotten worse. Marcin was clearly uninterested in mending their broken relationship. Michelina told him she was unhappy and wanted to return to Poland with their 3-year-old son Jakub. Marcin decided that his son would be better off without a mother. Marcin invited Michelina to go shopping with him and his friend, 18-year-old Patrick Boris, on Saturday, May 28, 2011. Marcin rarely wanted to spend time with Michelina, which surprised her. Nonetheless, she was ecstatic, believing that things were finally turning around. Michelina dashed to the bathroom and began applying her makeup. Fortunately, Jakub was spending the day with his grandmother, Marcin's mother, and was not present when what happened next occurred. Michelina emerged from the bathroom to find Marcin and Patrick staring back at her, eerie smiles on their faces. Marcin grabbed Michelina's arm and said, "I want to show you something." He took a 300,000-volt stun gun from his pocket and pressed it against Michelina's neck before tasering her. Michelina's entire body was in agony as she collapsed to the floor. Marcin, a 224-pound bodybuilder, pressed his knees against her chest and held her down. Marcin was asked if he was going to kill Michelina. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Patrick, go get the packing tape," yelled Marcin. Michelina was gagged, bound around the wrists and ankles, and her mouth was taped shut. They tasered her again after she was tied up and slumped against a wall. Marcin and Patrick dragged Michelina into the kitchen and placed her inside a cardboard box a few hours later. She screamed for Marcin to let her go as he began to tape the box shut with her inside. Marcin knelt down, laughed, and said, "I've hated you for 4 years, you'll never see your son again." Marcin and Patrick drove to a wooded area near Huddersfield, West Yorkshire, and placed the cardboard box in the trunk of Patrick's car. They buried the box in a shallow pre-dug grave, and an 88-pound log was placed on top of Michelina to prevent her from escaping. Michelina heard dirt being shoveled on top of her as she lay terrified and in agony in the box. She began to pray. The noises eventually stopped. Michelina wasn't sure if Marcin and Patrick had left, but she knew she had to leave now. Michelina began taking shallow breaths and fought to stay conscious, fearing she would suffocate. "The thing that saved me was thinking of my little boy, Jakub," she said. "If I died, I'd never see him again, and he'd be without his mother," Michelina later told news reporters. Michelina realized she had something that could save her life as she looked down at her bound wrists, her diamond engagement ring. Michelina cut the tape off her mouth, legs, and wrists with the sharp edges of the ring. She slashed at the cardboard until she could make a hole. She inserted her fingers into the hole and tore at the cardboard, but all she felt was soil. Michelina's face, hair, and clothes were covered in soil as it began to collapse into the box. She yelled for help, but no one could hear her. She was exhausted and her entire body ached, but she knew she had to keep fighting if she wanted to see her son again. "Keep going," she told herself. Michelina kept slashing, kicking, and tearing at the box until she could stick an arm out, then her head, and finally her entire body. Michelina miraculously freed herself after an hour inside the box. Not only had she survived the unthinkable, but she had done so with the very ring Marcin had given her. Michelina ran into the road, attracting the attention of a motorist, who called the police. Authorities arrived 15 minutes later, and Michelina showed them the cardboard box in which she was buried alive. When authorities arrived at Marcin's door and informed him that he was being held for kidnapping and attempted murder, he was taken aback. Authorities discovered several different chemicals and instructions for homemade explosives while searching the home he shared with Michelina. Authorities later discovered that after burying Michelina alive, the two men used her bank card to withdraw £500 from an ATM. Marcin told the court that he only wanted to scare Michelina and not kill her. Of course, this defense was quickly dismissed. Marcin was sentenced to 20 years in prison after being convicted of attempted murder and kidnapping. Patrick was acquitted of attempted murder but convicted of kidnapping. He was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. What are your thoughts on the Michelina Lewandowska's case? I really appreciate your input. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Be a part of the Chris Crime Diaries family and hit the subscribe button now.